Have you ever thought about what it would be like to live for not just 100 years, but for almost 1,000? Today, we're going to look at an ancient story about a family where that's exactly what happened.
It's pretty hard to wrap your head around, isn't it? Living for 9 centuries. It sounds like something straight out of a fantasy story. But this idea actually comes from a really old and famous account.
So, we're going to follow this family story, starting right from the very beginning. We'll see how this really predictable pattern of life and death gets interrupted by something totally unexpected.
Hope.
Okay, so our story kicks off with the very first family, and right away a really clear pattern gets set that lasts for generations. This is where it all starts. Adam is the first person in this really long family line. The story says that Adam lived for an incredible 930 years. He had his family, and after this super long life, his story ends with a very simple but powerful phrase, and then he died.
Well, the family line continued with his son, Seth. And, you guessed it, just like his dad, Seth's life was also incredibly long.
Seth lived to be 912 years old, and just like with his father, after a long life and having more kids, his story ends with those exact same 3 words, and then he died. This phrase just keeps showing up over and over again.
So you start to see this really clear pattern taking shape. For generation after generation, the story is pretty much the same. A man has a son, he lives for hundreds more years, has more kids, and then he dies. It's this predictable cycle.
Wow, okay, this chart really puts things in perspective. See that first little bar? That's about how long people live today. Now look at the other 2. Adam lived more than 10 times that long. And Methuselah, who we'll talk about in a minute, lived even longer. It's just an almost unimaginable amount of time. But after centuries of the same old rhythm, the story suddenly changes. One man's life doesn't follow the pattern at all.
So the story goes on like this, person after person. The names change, the ages are a little different, but that pattern is always there. That is, until we meet a man named Enoch. His story completely breaks the mold.
And right here is where the story takes a huge turn. For everyone before him, the story ended with death. But for Enoch, the text says something completely different. It says that God took him away.
So what was so different about Enoch? Well, the story says he walked faithfully with God. It seems like their connection was so special that instead of dying, he just disappeared. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, taken by God. Now, after this surprising break in the pattern, the story takes another turn, and this time it introduces a new feeling into the family line. A feeling of hope. Enoch's son was Methuselah, and he actually holds the record. He lived to be 969 years old, the longest life in the whole story. But after his super long life, the story goes back to the old pattern for him, and then he died.
But then came Methuselah's grandson, a man named Noah. And when Noah was born, his father gave him a name that was also a promise, a real sign of hope for what was to come.
When Noah was born, his father, Lamech, said these words. The name Noah itself means rest or comfort. It represented a totally new hope, a hope for some relief from all the struggles of life.
So when we step back and look at the whole thing, we can see this amazing journey that spans 10 generations, all the way from the very first man to this new symbol of hope.
So let's quickly recap our journey. It starts with Adam in this long repeating cycle of life and death. Then, Enoch comes along and breaks that cycle by walking with God. After him, his son Methuselah lives the longest life of anyone. And finally, we get to Noah, whose birth brings a new feeling into this story, hope.
And that's really the one clear idea to remember. This isn't just a list of names and long lifespans. It's a story that starts with a predictable cycle of life and death, but then it introduces these moments of something totally different, a special relationship with God and a promise of comfort and hope for the future.
It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? Every family's story is being written one generation at a time. I wonder, what kind of story will our own family lines tell someday? Thanks for exploring this story with me.